Everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to be talking about Viego, the Ruined King, and how you guys can best counter him in your games. Now, unlike Samira, Viego has not nearly been as difficult a champion for people to deal with. Samira, people really hated dealing with, to the point where she's still routinely banned. Viego is not quite there. He has a relatively balanced win rate that really isn't that big of a deal, but his ban rate is still indicative that players still don't want to face him in games. He still is kicking like something like a 40% ban rate or something along those lines, so definitely players are not having a good time dealing with him. So today's video is to help you guys, give you some tips on how you can deal with Viego in your own games. I do apologize also for the footage. I didn't have a Viego game because of the patch recently, but either way, we will be talking about him today regardless. Now, Viego is a champion who, while he seems like he's very strong because of how he breaks the game with his passive, he still has a lot of exploitable weaknesses, especially that come all the way back to Champion Select. Though he's strong early, he's not as crazy effective as some of the other early junglers like Lee Sin, Olaf, or Kha'Zix. Like, these are champions that can duel him early for crab control. They can counter jungle him, because if they find him in his jungle, he's probably going to die because he doesn't have his E on cooldown. He's spamming his abilities, so there's more likely a chance for Kha'Zix to find him with his pants down. That sort of a thing. So they can definitely counter jungle him, reduce his farm, compete with him for crabs. Especially Kha'Zix is a champion that can keep up with him in the jungle and make sure that he can't do anything cheesy like going for an early Drake. Like, there are a lot of jungler picks that you can choose into Viego that just kind of ruin his ability to do much of anything in the early stages of the game. And Viego is not a good champion from behind. He has some marginal utility. He has obviously the ability to still do a decent chunk of damage from behind just because of how his kit works and the amount of percent health damage he does, but he's still more effective when ahead because he just doesn't do that much on his own, unfortunately, unless he has the ability to be ahead, to throw his damage at you and to throw himself at you and be able to take things from there. Like, other than that, there's really not a lot he can do. He has no utility. A lot of his tools are very selfish tools. And so if Viego isn't ahead, there's just not that much he's able to accomplish. The other thing that counters him, there are a couple other things that do work as well, but if you're not going to be in the jungle directly dealing with him, anything that deals with auto attacks or reduces the effectiveness of auto attacks, things like Teemo Blind, Malphite, or Rammus abilities that reduce his damage through auto attacks, Thornmail, anything that helps with auto attacks greatly reduces his damage output and his ability to hurt you. If Viego can't attack you, he can't really do that much. He has two abilities he can press outside of his ultimate to do damage without auto-attacking. Otherwise, he is all about the right click. So anything that counters Master Yi is going to be able to counter Viego, and that just kind of goes across the board. Anything that you would be picking or doing to stop a Master Yi is exactly the same kind of thing you can be doing to deal with Viego. Another interesting little note here is champions with after death passives can actually stuff Viego pretty hard because even if he's able to get that first kill against a Karthus or Sion or Kog'Maw, he can't body snatch them until their death passive wears off, which prevents him from healing or going untargetable for even longer. So Viego, a lot of what he wants to do is get on top of someone, get that first kill, drop aggro with the body snatch, and then immediately upon popping out, use all of those champions' abilities to get a bunch of immediate damage or value, and then try to snowball the fight from there, because popping out, getting the reset on his ultimate, that sort of a thing. As long as, if he has to wait longer to get that first kill, either if that first kill takes him longer to get in general, or if you're able to do something like reduce the or increase the amount of time it takes him to actually get into that kill, like, those are still really huge deals because Viego really needs to be moving very quickly. He can't afford to have dead time where he's standing around waiting for the Sion to slowly bleed out or for the Kog'Maw to explode or whatever. He needs that value now. So that's a really big deal in order to stop him. So if you do play those champions, great. I'm not going to say you should pick champions with after death passives to specifically counter Viego. Like, it's not that big of a deal, but it is something to consider if you're thinking about who you want to play to defeat Viego. The other thing that helps with Viego once you get into game is that he does rely on stealth to close the gap. It's only camouflage. This is not true invisibility, so unlike a champion like Talon, who when he presses R, you're only going to see him when he appears right next to you, you are able to track Viego. If you get close enough to him, you can see him, and if he tries to channel his W, you will see him, and if you have pink wards, you will see him. This means that pink wards are actually a really huge deal. If you see the Herald Path come rolling down a lane towards you, drop a pink ward into that cloud, because it will spot out Viego as he tries to run past it. There's literally no way around him around it for him. He has to either walk through a bush or try to use Fog of War at that point, but otherwise he has no way through without you being able to see him. It also means that tanky teammates who can face check into him are pretty easily able to spot him coming. If you have someone like Braum who can just kind of walk into the fog and wait and see if Viego shows up, like, that's a big deal, and that's a really big way of stopping Viego from just kind of running into your backline and getting into a spot where he's actually able to counter you or able to start getting damage off if you have someone who can just kind of hang out and say, yeah, no, you don't actually get to do that. So that's actually a pretty crazy thing. The other thing is that because of how easy his fog is to counter, it makes him a lot worse at dueling because he relies on the steroids to function, and if he's forced out of the fog or if he isn't able to pick a fight while his E is active, Viego is so much worse because he needs that movement speed, he needs that attack speed, and depriving him of those two traits will really reduce his ability to do what he wants in the middle of a skirmish. Now later in the game, especially once he's built some ability haste, Viego can be a lot harder to track because he'll have that cooldown up much quicker and it lasts quite a long time, but especially in the early stages of the game, he has to be very careful about when and where he uses it, and that can really give you an advantage in a fight if you can use the Herald Path, wait for it to wear off or lure him away from his cloud, and then fight him right afterwards because he won't have that asset available to him for these steroids. This also goes for lane, by the way. He wants to use it to get into a brush or something and try to get into W range, and even just throwing it onto like a wall or something will tend to force you to back away because you don't know if he's there or not. If you have a pink ward in the Tri-Brush or River, though, you'll know if Viego's coming down, so it reduces his ability to actually make that gank happen at the end of the day. So it's again, pink wards are actually a really big deal against this champion. He also is a very squishy champion, as you would expect from a damage-dealing hyper carry, so similar to what I talked about with Samira and similar to what I would say for Master Yi, what you want to be doing is at the break of a fight, hold on to some of your crowd control or burst. Wait for Viego to actually commit to the fight, and then try to pop him before he's able to get a kill. He doesn't have any defensive tools, really, unlike Samira, who at least has the W, where if she's able to pop Blade Whirl at the right time, she'll prevent a lot of the damage and crowd control that you try to throw at her as she commits to the fight. Viego doesn't have that. The only thing he can do is use his E, and as we've already talked about, there are a lot of ways for you to counter his E and a lot of ways for you to keep vision on Viego, regardless of what he's trying to do. So it really, really hurts Viego then if you're able to hold out on using various powerful abilities until Viego commits, and at that point you can throw your damage onto him and burst him down. He has no way of surviving outside of his sort of innate healing, so on that regard, anti-healing is going to hurt his ability to stay alive in fights, because if he's not healing for as much as he's used to, that's, again, pretty much the only defensive tool he has outside of his ability to drop aggro with E, which, like we talked about, is something that you can really shut down. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of stop Viego from setting up a play. The other thing that happens is Viego is really a champion that thrives on getting a kill and snowballing that into a team fight win. Unlike Samira, he doesn't get a dash reset or anything upon getting that first kill. Now, I say this, he could steal a champion with a dash, and that is sort of a dash reset, but especially given that there's sort of a brief delay that happens as Viego is sort of stealing a champion, and you can kind of tell what he's doing, and you know what champions are on your team ideally and what they are capable of doing, you kind of have a warning that, oh hey, Viego is trying to, you know, steal this body and then immediately convert it into using all these champions' abilities to get value. So if he gets that first kill, back away while he's in this body snatch animation, and honestly, that's a big way to stop him from snowballing the team fight into a win. Obviously, it's not always the case where you're able to stop him from doing that. Obviously, it's not always that easy to do. He does have teammates there, ideally, who are trying to hold you in place for him to come out of that body snatch and use his abilities. But if you have the ability to do so, once he gets that first kill, when he's body snatching, back away. That way you can wait for his body to time out, then you can re-engage knowing that he's down his R, he no longer has that ability in his pool, and he's also lacking all of the extra value he could have gotten from his passive in that fight. So obviously this works better if you're able to trade out a kill as well to match the one that Viego got, but in worst case scenario you can back away and at least know that Heartbreaker isn't on the table, Viego's body snatching is not at the table. And finally, Viego has difficulty entering a fight on his own. Without initiation, he's a sitting duck and kind of easy to pounce on and kill. If Viego's trying to play forward without a tank to either peel for him or initiate for him, he's going to find it a lot harder to actually make plays. And this is an important thing to note for especially like solo queue style games where you don't have a lot of actual frontliners or actual tanks to set up coordinated engagements. Like, Viego should never be able to make a play happen on you if you are smartly warding, or at least playing backwards and respecting his ability to fight. Like, really, his ability to fight you is charging a W, which is super obvious, and the projectile is so slow, it's so easy to get out of the range of that ability. Or using his E at you, which again is a long cooldown, and if he's using that, you kind of back away from it or pink ward it, and then Viego loses a lot of his ability to make a play. So there are a lot of ways that you can kind of shut Viego down if he's trying to make something happen on his own. If it's a coordinated tank engagement, then you can do the save the crowd control or burst for when he commits to the fight, as we've talked about before. But anyways, guys, that's going to be it for me. Let me know if you guys found this helpful, or if you have any other Viego tips of your own to talk about. I would love to hear your guys' thoughts, especially if you have other ways that you think are good ways of dealing with Viego. If you enjoyed the video today, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed the video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.